TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift's emerging top sire Into Mischief, whose top progeny in 2017 includes 3-time Grade 1 winner Practical Joke.
Welcome to TCI's Road to the Breeders' Cup 2017 from the TCI studios just off Ramsey's Restaurant's loading dock here. I'm Todd Schrupp, along with the most important part of the show, Joel Cunningham. Joel, it's hard to believe this Breeders' Cup Challenge Series has been going on for a while. We're finally winding it down. Is the Breeders' Cup becoming clearer with all these races we've seen?
I think it is in most divisions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are still some that are wide open. We talked about the 2-year-olds last week, particularly the 2-year-old fillies. You know, would a star emerge in that division? I think we saw two pretty good ones this weekend. So I do think it's clarifying a little bit. What do you think?
Well, let's start with the sprint division, because I think it's clear Dre Fong's reputation was enhanced by the results that we saw.
Yeah.
In some of the other races. We can argue that a little bit going in, but I didn't see a breakout performance. I did see kind of a return to form in the Stoll Keenan Ogden Phoenix, and that is Whitmore. Whitmore looked like the best sprinter at the beginning part of the year. Does this narrow win, and it was a narrow win in the Phoenix, change anything for you?
Yeah, we'll go to the race replay now and take a look. And he had a pretty wide trip in here. You had to like the way he finished. There was a lot of horses there at the wire, though, Todd, so it kind of makes you wonder about the quality of it. The horse for the course there, Limousine Liberal, was coming at him late. I thought he was going to get by.
This performance by Awesome Banner is amazing.
Good performance.
Yeah.
And really, the Awesome Banner performance, in my opinion, sort of validated another horse that we'll talk about in the TCI Top 5 in a bit. So I look and I see a lot of horses at the wire here. Typically, I have a hard time giving credit to a winner in that instance, particularly when we're talking big picture, Breeders' Cup Sprint. The Sprint's an interesting division. You talk about it, things becoming more clear. I think the Sprint is very contentious this year, but in a good way. Unlike a couple past years where we see maybe, you know, smaller fields. I think the Sprint this year, there are a good 5-6 of them, I think, that are pretty promising for that.
Okay, let's go out to California, the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. We mentioned Dre Fong's the leader of the division, but he was not in this race. But there were at least 3 main contenders in the spot. Horse that you liked, a horse that I liked. Roy H. ended up getting the win.
He did get it done. I thought it was a measured win, too. I thought he won pretty easily here. You see him turning for home on the outside. Son of More Than Ready. That has that quick action. I mean, he is a crack 6-furlong sprinter. And you see him going by the field here. The 3-year-old actually got a pretty good number, too, in the pink silks there. American Anthem, were you surprised to see him on the lead? Big 17 hands horse. And I know it's the Bob Baffert speed, but I don't think that's the way he wants to run, particularly going 6 furlongs. So Roy H., good race for him. He gets another 110-ish type buyer in here. I mean, that is going to make him a definite Breeders' Cup contender. And I think you thought that coming in.
Yeah,
that he could
I like what you said. It was a measured win. He did not empty out in that race, which is important. You obviously got to save something for the big prize, the Breeders' Cup Sprint itself. So as you look at this division, how would you rank them?
Yeah, let's go to the TCI Top 5 here. And this is our first one of the season in the Sprint division. Again, Todd, I really like this group. And really, Takaful's a horse that I like as well. I don't have him in there.
Hold on a second. What, did you make a mistake on number 1? Is the graphic wrong?
Imperial Hint. Hey,
that's number 1?
Awesome Banner. Look how bad this horse beat him in the Smile. He's always shown ability, and I really think he's honed it now at 6 furlongs, now as a 4-year-old. Like the way he's coming in the race in career form. I mean, he essentially almost broke the track record at Parks last time out, 107 and change under wraps. Javier believes in him, has rode him his last 2 times out. The numbers are there.
You know the Breeders' Cup is in California this year.
I do know it's in California, and I totally respect that. And look, Dre Fong's number 2 on my list.
Okay.
And look, Dre Fong, again's a horse that, tell me a time he's had to overcome adversity. I question him a little bit if he were to face a field that's maybe a little more wide open of a field and maybe have to take dirt or some adversity and how he's going to handle that. Roy H., hey, let's face it, Roy H. is going to be one of the favorites in here. It's probably a little bit low of a rating there at number 3. But again, I went back and forth. And look, you don't see Takaful on my list, and he's a horse that I really respect at 6 furlongs. I just think this is a good 5 or 6 horses. And I just don't think I think you're shaving hairs trying to find the right horse. And again, with sprinters, they run hard all year. They run from the gate to the wire. They don't get into a lax rhythm like other horses do. I think they can go in and out of form, and this horse, I think, is in tremendous form right now.
Okay, well, I give you credit because I think you get a little outside the box here with something like Mind Your Biscuits. I mean, that forms a little. But
no
look,
question.
I've always felt that going to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, you want to look for a horse actually off a loss and maybe off a freshening that has a performance that's good enough and it might be ready to peak. So, interesting list. I don't think that's going to match up with a lot of other people, and that's good. I think that's very good. It's a
well, if they tangle early, which this horse certainly have the ability to do. Who's the benefactor? I mean,
Yeah.
is Mind Your Biscuits then a factor if he can return to form?
I mean, and we're talking about this before, post position draws and the rest of it. Okay, so
Absolutely.
that's the boys in the sprint. What about the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint? I mean, that's, you know, look, there's not a lot of defining races for that group, so this is a tough list to come up with.
I went with the Californians there. I mean, I definitely see a distinct advantage, in my opinion, with the California Filly sprinters. Sky Diamonds, it's hard to deny her form. Not sure if maybe she's a little better at 6.5 than 7. I mean, this is a tough race. Constellation has tremendous form at 7 furlongs. She's been sort of a bridesmaid all year, but I think she's a definite player in there. Unique Bella, again, she's going to be your favorite off the reputation, but she's a 2-turn mare. Is she really a sprint-type mare, that big frame, that tap it?
I mean, she looked like a pogo stick to me down the lane. I mean, she won that race, the LA woman coming back, but I don't know. I think she'll get the screws put to her. Yeah. I think she's going to be overbet, quite honestly.
No doubt.
She wins her comeback race, but it wasn't much of a race, and I wasn't overly impressed. So,
well, she's going to be your favorite, and
I mean,
she's a big 2-turn filly.
Former claimer, a horse that we don't even necessarily believe in, and those are your top 2.
Absolutely. Well, Constellation, again, you know, her inability to finish first, I think you have to have her in the top 3, and I think she's going to be on the board. But again, to not have that killer instinct, not have the ones on the page, it's hard to put her much higher than that. Finest City, what do you think about her off the layoff? Working
look,
well.
that to me is the key. I think she's great fresh, and you know, she's obviously shown she can win in this spot, and she can win in California. And she likes that track, obviously. Del Mar. I'd even rank her maybe ahead of Unique Bella. I just think Unique Bella is going to be overbet, and everyone's going to get carried away with thinking she's going to be better.
Man, I agree 100%. And I had to throw a New York horse in there.
That's
I
fine.
mean, you could have put Karina Mia, Paula Silverlining. Could have went a lot of different ways. By the Moon, maybe. Highway Star, have to respect her form at 7 furlongs.
Let's go back to analysis of some other Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races in the 2-year-old filly division. It was the Darley Alcibiades at Keeneland. Mark Casse had a dreadful Saratoga meeting, but he's having the exact opposite at Keeneland. He can't miss.
He had 2 of the best fillies in this race, no question, and your winner was just spectacular, I thought. I think this is what she's wanted to do, and we talked about last week. With that pedigree, 2 turns on the dirt, she puts away this group. I thought McPeak's horse was a pretty good runner-up in here. I mean, remember, she got an 86 buyer breaking her maiden first time out and beating that Mia Mischief, who came back and won by daylight on Sunday at Keeneland. So that kind of validates the form here, in my opinion. So when I look at this horse again, little inexperienced, filly shipping out to the West Coast. How's she going to handle it all? Sometimes we see feast or famine there. Obviously worked last year for Casse with Classic Empire. I think this filly's a player now going against the other Malibu Moon filly, Moonshine Memories, who, again, maybe a little distance challenge.
Well, given the sponsorship situation, we love when the Malibu Moons do well. Frizette in New York. Separation of Powers was a dominating maiden winner and was supposed to dominate in her second start, first try against Stakes Company. But as you talked about on last week's show, she was undone by the trip that day. She got dueled into submission. This was a return to form in the Frizette.
It really was, and I really liked how she rated in here. I mean, was completely in hand, onto the turn, let the crowd go in front of her, ran by him late, won the way that you expected a filly like her to run. Now, she's a smaller type filly, and she does have a quicker action. So again, if you're trying to knock her, you know, maybe there are concerns about 2 turns, maybe there are concerns off of this race where she got a 9 on the sheets, having to ship out to California and replicate that, going 2 turns for the first time in that California climate. I do think she'll take a lot of money in the Breeders' Cup, and I'm a little buyer beware on her, but she's certainly top class. Just not sure exactly if this is the right scenario for her to ship out west and go 2 turns.
I was just happy that Chad Brown will at least have 1 horse in the Breeders' Cup. Okay, let's rank these juvenile fillies as you see them.
Let's go to the TCI Top 5, Todd, and we've actually launched one of these already this year, so this is sort of an amended, updated Top 5. I'm going to go with Heavenly Love. Again, grade 1 form, and a filly I think is on the come up and likes 2 turns. I think that's the key. We talked about this. Moonshine Memories, again, with the home field favorite. I do have to put her in the top 5 now. Separation of Powers, I move up 1 spot. Luring Star comes down, obviously, from number 1 for me. Thought she worked okay the other day, but she's not ready for this yet. And Best Performance, Terry Finley told me they were probably going to run in the Juvenile Fillies turf, but I like her form around 2 turns, and I'm going to keep her in the top 5 in case they run her. But that's what I think about this division right now.
Yeah.
I mean, P.D. Bianchi, you talk about some other horses in there. I'm not real confident. Maya Malibu, worth noting. I was a little disappointed in her performance in the Frizette. I think her future is going to be maybe around 2 turns as a 3-year-old.
I can just say, you know, watching the 2-year-old filly crop out west all summer long, I wasn't impressed. So I like the fact that you're loaded here Midwest and East. I think that's going to be kind of the dominant juvenile fillies. Okay, let's turn our attention to the boys in the juvenile division. I just have to say, I was at the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. It was a heartbreaking moment for the Ken McPeak barn. It looks like they're going to win the race, and all of a sudden it's such a catastrophic injury to their horse that could not be saved. Ken McPeak called it the hardest day he's ever had in racing. And, you know, it's those moments, we talk about the highs and lows in this game, it's those lows when you watch the racing community come together and rally around Ken McPeak, and he handles about as good as you could. Now, having said that, obviously people are going to look at how this race played out. What about ultimately the winner in this race, Free Drop Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a horse that's bred for 2 turns, has wanted it all along. He showed that form in the Hopeful, that good maiden win at Churchill. Not surprised by the winner at all. Unfortunately, like you said, the takeaway, Todd, I think you and I both being there at Keeneland, was it was a tremendous day of racing, but the one thing that stuck in my mind was 10 City. Yeah, big, beautiful black horse with such a future. To see it to go down like that, particularly him making a move like that. And you're right, that was a winning move. I mean, to me, turning for home, I don't know if he would have held off Free Drop Billy, but you knew he's going to be right there. Just I can't help but to think about the swing of emotions that went through that owner and trainer's mind. Yeah,
and again, that's why we just appreciate every moment. And that's the whole thing. You know, we get to watch these horses when they come out in the races, but think about how the connections spend all that time with them day in and day out. They are like family, so that was a really, really tough situation. The Champagne up in New York had a big field and ended up with an upset in here.
Yeah, I mean, the Champagne Stakes, we talked about how wide open that group was. I thought the Curlin Colt ran well for Chad Brown, but he's still a maiden. So now you start thinking, you know, what are they going to do? Are they going to sort of back off now? Are they going to keep pursuing the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? With Bolt D'Oro in the division, I think the prudent move would be right to back off in here. But how about Ferenz Fire? I mean, I thought he showed a dynamite turn of foot to come from where he came from in the race and to blow by Chad Brown's colt in there. I mean, I was really impressed. And look, I said a lot of horses could win this race, but if I would have spread in this race and say a horizontal wager, I don't know if I'd have used this horse. I was not bought in at all, even though he's the greatest stakes winner at Saratoga. But I'm taking it back now. I was impressed with the win. And I just, again, 2 turns with him, with the pedigree, the Spicetown Poseidon's Warrior, more of a sprint-oriented pedigree, and that quick action. I don't know if his features around 2 turns, but I was impressed with the performance.
Okay, so it was tough to put together rankings for the Juvenile Fillies. It looks like a wide open division. As far as #1 in the Juvenile, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, there's no doubt who the horse is to beat.
Oh, there's no question. Let's go to the TCI top 5 now, and we'll show an updated top 5 here. Yeah, you know who #1 is going to be, Bolt D'Oro. I'm putting Montauk in the second spot.
Wow, that was quite a debut win, that's for sure.
And I'm doing that saying that he's probably not going to run. I think connections are more focused on maybe the Nagel or Remsen route, the conservative route. They are probably going to pre-enter, though, and they'll probably, let's face it, they're going to see what Bolt D'Oro does. If there was some scratch of Bolt D'Oro down the road, you could potentially see him make the trip out to the west. Solomini liked his work last time out. I mean, he's coming along. Son of Curlin, I think he's late developing. He worked with High Opportunity a couple days ago, liked the work. 2 turns is no question in his future, and you have to respect Baffert on the West Coast. Good magic, you know, again, Curlin projecting around 2 turns. You have to have him in the top 5 based on what he's shown, in my opinion. And Free Drop Billy, I mean, hey, the Breeders' Futurity winner. Appreciated 2 turns. I think you have to have him in there. But you mentioned it, Todd. They're all running for second, I believe.
Okay, so from the youngsters to the older horses, what about the Breeders' Cup Classic? One race that leads there, the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Keen Ice was the 6-5 favorite in here. Yeah. I've always felt that speed can be a very good thing at a 1.25 miles at Belmont, because the only true 2-turn race on the main track at Belmont is a 1.5 miles. So that 1.25 miles, if you start on the inside, they start right on the turn. Speed always holds up, and in this case, speed went gate to wire.
And this horse, obviously, I mean, you looked at the numbers. He fit on the numbers, just not in the class, because he'd been coming out of the New York bred ranks. He got the trip, and he obviously pulled it off. I was a little disappointed Rally Cry didn't show more speed in there. I mean, you figured Todd had the race with the favorite in terms of the closing scenario, but to allow this horse to free run as opposed to Rally Cry, a horse that I felt like had some tactical speed, a little disappointed in the tactics there, and that horse obviously ran poorly. So the big question is, do you take anybody out of this race now going back to the Breeders' Cup Classic?
I don't. Yeah. It's going to be such a different race, and that horse, you know, would take a lot of heat with what you expected. It's going to be a fast pace, I think, in the Breeders' Cup Classic, just kind of looking at who's going to ultimately end up there. So how do you rank these older horses for the Classic?
Well, you mentioned how Diversify, I don't think, can win the Classic, but he could be an X factor from a pace standpoint. If he goes, now they may not go to the Breeders' Cup. I think they'll pre-enter and take a look. But to me, he injects a lot of speed.
He's lost his last couple of races, right?
Not only that, I didn't like his last work last week, Todd. I mean, he's a horse that,
Why is he #1?
Because I just think at 1.25 miles, if you're giving Baffert the opportunity to trend up to a race, he's been pointing for this race all along. I still think at 1.25 miles, I've never been a big gun runner fan, particularly if I think there's going to be pace in the race.
All right, that's fine.
If there's going to be pace in the race.
Okay. Do you think he's stretching it to get a 1.25 mile gun runner? I mean, you would look at his 1 1/8 races and not say that, but
Sure.
Is that part of your thinking here?
He has a quicker action. He's a horse that, to me, you're right. I'd prefer a little more stamina going 1.25 miles. If it was a 1 1/8 I'd give him a big shot here, no question. 1.25 miles, Arrogate wasn't on his game in the Pacific Classic. He looked awful, in my opinion, and he still almost won the race. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point.
But you know the Breeders' Cup is at Del Mar, right? So all we've heard is how he doesn't like Del Mar.
Everybody says that, but when I look at his works at Santa Anita since he's come back, I didn't think his Santa Anita works were good there. And look, he won the Breeders' Cup Classic there. So I don't know if it's Del Mar. I mean, this is a horse that's run well at Gulfstream against the speed bias, run well in the Dubai World Cup after breaking deadline. I mean, he's carried his track everywhere.
He was clearly the best horse in the world at one time. I just think it's not that time.
I agree.
Here's what I think. If you're right about Gun Runner, that he's vulnerable, and I'm right that Arrogate, Del Mar's not his track, and he's not the same horse. In other words, his performance at the Dubai World Cup was so good that maybe he can never even get close to that, or maybe as good as he once was, and that's a problem. So if that happens to those two, I think we have a wild upset in the Classic. I don't know who that horse is. I don't know if that horse is on this list, but I think there's good reason to think there'll be an upset.
Well, based on the work that I saw last week from Arrogate, if this race was next weekend, I'd probably bet West Coast, dead honestly. Having said that, Bob has a few weeks to get Arrogate right. So look, it's Bob Baffert. I mean, he's winning the Breeders' Cup Classic with Bayern, for God's sake. So I still think that the upside is there to get Arrogate correct. But look, you saw a lot of Bob Baffert flavor in there. Move Tahish. I mean, this division, quite honestly, is wide open if the top two, like you said, are counterfeit to some degree.
Joel, is this getting comfortable, this partnership with you?
Man, you look good today.
Well, you know what? I always try to...
I must have made you look bad last week.
I always try to surprise people. I'm like, I'm going to outdress Joel today.
Hey, wait. Before we get off air, I got something for you.
Come on.
El Choro gift certificate and a Cruising Cuts coupon. And look, there's free queso in there, man. That's for you.
I'll tell you what, I love the development that this studio is in, but I love the people I get to work with. Joel, you're a true treasure. Hey, have a great Breeders' Cup.
Thanks so much for stepping in, man. You do.
Thanks for watching the TCI Road to the Breeders' Cup 2017.